Welcome to the Can We Talk About It podcast.
I'm Jude.
And I'm Tori.
And this podcast is about us having open, honest dialogue about stuff that we've been dealing with in our lives, especially as two young girls in our 20s.
Some conversations will be heavier than others. Some may be funny, sad, or even triggering.
This is an open playground where we can talk about anything. Hence the title, Can We Talk About It?
So let's get talking. Hello and welcome to another episode of Can We Talk About It? Today, I want to talk about something that's kind of important, something that's... Jude? Hello, Jude?
What? Huh?
Dude, we're kind of recording the podcast right now.
Oh, right. Sorry, I'm just watching this dance video on Instagram.
And that's exactly what I want to talk about. Social media.
Oh, well, yikes. My bad.
So because I'm not the only one on this episode, but before we jump into this,
or are you?
Right?
Clearly I'm not focused here.
Keep on social media. So before jump into this, I want to kind of throw out some stats. Are you cool with stats?
No, I hate stats.
Great. So according to this one website that I found, there are 3.2 billion social media users across the world. That's a lot.
Out of 7 billion people?
Sure. I don't know how many people there are in the world, but
there's 7 billion, close to.
Is there?
Yeah.
Awesome. And so that equates to about 40% of the current population. That's 2 hours and 22 minutes that people are on their phones looking at social media every day.
That's too much.
That's
I could take a whole nap. I could take 2 whole naps.
That's like a whole film right there.
It is.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
A whole flight as well.
You could travel somewhere.
The time that it takes you to be on your phone for 2.5 hours, you can literally go to a whole other state.
You could cook an entire week's worth of food in 2.5 hours.
I mean, that's a lot of food that you're cooking in 2 hours. That's more Thanksgiving, I think.
No, a whole week's worth of food.
Yeah, I get. Oh,
that's what I'm saying.
A week. Oh, okay.
Yeah, you can do a whole meal prep, and then you have no excuse to be eating garbage.
Yeah. So I want to kind of go back to what life was like before social media. I mean, I know you're not that much younger than me, but do you remember life without?
Yeah, I do for sure. Because I didn't have social media until high school, middle school and junior high and all that. I never had social media. And it's interesting because nowadays, my little brother who's 11 now, he is he's had social media since he was in first grade, second grade. And so he grew up with social media. It's insane how different that can be growing up already having social media or being used to people having social media. You know what I mean? It's the norm now. I feel even as you get into elementary school, whereas I didn't even have it until high school. So even though I've been kind of in this in-between phase where I've had social media and it doesn't feel new necessarily, it is quite relatively new. And there was a time I can remember that I didn't have social media. I didn't have a phone for a while. I was one of the kids that had a flip phone when I got into high school.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when I didn't get a cell phone until after my mom died because I took her cell phone, and that was in 2005, and it was a flip phone.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, that's when the Razor and the Crazer came about, and the sidekicks where you had to flip your phone up.
Or you could slide to get the keyboard, but it still wasn't a touchscreen. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
I had those. Well, I never had a sidekick, but my brother did. But I also remember having AOL, which was the first time I experienced chat rooms.
Mm-hmm.
I used to play these games called AOL games, and I still, funny enough, still play some of those games because I found this website that you can download all of them. But anyway, I experienced chat room for the first time. That was really interesting for me because the first real social media didn't pop up until 2003, which was MySpace. And I remember when MySpace came out because everyone was that was all the rage. I mean, in 2003, I wasn't really checking for it, but once I got to middle school, that's when it got really popular for me and my friends. But everyone had their MySpace page. You click on the page and a cool song would pop up, and it was an interesting thing for MySpace because that was the first social media that I remember, and I remember spending loads and loads of time on MySpace trying to figure out what was the nice profile picture, trying to figure out what was the cool, username, trying to figure out what was the cool sound, because when you click on the page, you know, a song pops up.
Mm-hmm.
And some people had like the same song. And of course, you had those clever bios, and some people had music lyrics. I remember this one girl, I'm not going to say what her name is because she still exists, obviously. She's still alive. But she had this one MySpace profile picture profile bio that was, love is an 8-letter word, but so is bullshit. And that was such a teen angst.
Wait,
2000.
Love's an 8-letter word?
Yeah.
How is it's 4 letters?
No, like, I love you, I'm sorry.
Oh, I was like, love.
Did I just say love?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Like, love is 4 letters.
Sorry,
That
I was
doesn't
like,
make
what
any
are you talking
sense.
about? No, I'm sorry. I love you is a 4-letter. Well, it's not a word.
It's a phrase.
Yeah.
See, it still doesn't make sense.
But that's the point. She basically had that, but she was like, so is bullshit. And I was like, that's interesting. But that was such a 2006 to 2008. Everybody was such an emo kid back then.
Right.
Even I was an emo
me
kid
too.
back then. Everyone, their scene. That's what they called scene kids.
Dude, no, I called myself punk because I didn't want to be labeled that any label that anybody else was using. I remember that. That was my junior high phase.
Exactly. And so that was kind of the basis of it. But I also, and then of course, Facebook happened in 2004. And of course, we all know Facebook, which I recommend if you haven't watched The Social Network. Watch that movie.
I haven't watched that.
That's the movie about Facebook. Jesse Eisenberg plays Mark Zuckerberg, and
I need to see that then.
Andrew Garfield's in there.
That's interesting.
Armie Hammer. It's a really, really fabulous film.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a really, really good film. But Facebook happened. I didn't really get a Facebook until I was well into middle school, because by the time Facebook got really popular, MySpace had filtered out, obviously, because Facebook took over MySpace. And my parent was like, I don't really want you to have this because you're gonna keep posting all this crap on there, and I don't really want you on there. He's like, but if you get it, I'll have to make sure I have one too, so I can monitor you, basically. And that was kind of the first real experience, I think, that I had with, social media, was Facebook. Because MySpace was fine, but when I was in middle school, that was like the biggest thing to have was Facebook.
I didn't really get a Facebook until like 2012 when I was about 14, or it was 2011 when I was 13. I can't remember. It was one of those years. When I got Facebook, I just remember people would post about their moods like on their timelines all the time. Like, we wouldn't post like actual things we wanted to share. It was just like, I'm so bored. Or like we would post like those what was it? Like rate, date, hate things, like just, and like have like if you want to rate, date, hate, like, or like shit like that, like, you know what I mean? Like, it was just, it was always dumb stuff like that. That was basically what Facebook was for. That and games, like, pretty much.
It's like farm games, I think.
Yeah,
play those.
I was obsessed with like, I think it was like some castle, like not a castle, but like a what am I trying to say? It was like a kingdom, kingdom building game. It was similar to the farm game, but it was a kingdom, and like you had to fight wars and stuff instead. It was interesting.
Facebook has this thing now where it'll show you memories of like what you posted on this day several years ago.
God, yeah, I know.
And the post that so today at the time of this recording is August 7th. So 9 years ago to this day, I posted something at 11 p.m. that said epic fail. That was literally what I posted.
Epic fail.
And I think it's interesting too because, I remember people always say, like, I remember the moods on Facebook.
Yeah.
Everyone always had their moods. And then, of course, YouTube started in 2005. I remember when YouTube got really popular, and there used to be all kinds of different, like, videos on YouTube.
Yeah.
And those first, like, big YouTubers that, like Michelle Phan and, I guess Jenna Marbles technically, I guess she's like a newer, not like an older YouTube, but I think it's really interesting how social media has changed over time, where it's like the same social media platforms, they just look so different.
Yeah.
Because YouTube,
and they have such a different purpose. Like, we use them for such different things now.
Yeah.
And like, I remember when Facebook got started, it was all about like friending your grandmother that you don't talk to, and like friending all these people that like you don't like. We all started on Facebook because we wanted to stay in touch with like family members or like old friends that we've moved away from. But now it's like, I remember when I got into like high school and stuff, it became this thing where it was like, get as many friends on Facebook as you possibly can. You would accept friend requests from people you've never even met in your entire life. You don't even know this person.
Or it'd be one of those things where you have class with this person or you know that they go to your same school and they would friend you just because your bio said, oh, I go to this high school, or oh, I go to this college, or oh, I remember you from this football game, so I'm going to request you, and we'll never talk to each other.
And there would be like, some of my friends in high school had like 400 plus friends on Facebook, and I was like, how in the hell? Like, even like for like the past few years that I've had Facebook, like I would always keep my friends under 100. I never went above 100 friends. Like I would always delete all of my friends. Like if I'm like, if I don't talk to you actively, or if I don't like what you post on Facebook, I'm gonna delete you. And just recently I deleted my Facebook account.
Yeah.
So
how many friends on Facebook do you think I have? Take a guess. Now mind you, I've had my Facebook since 2008.
I'm gonna guess between 200 and 250.
I have 700 friends.
Really?
Yeah. I just checked right now. I
That's
have
701
701 friends. Actually, the other day I was on Facebook and I came across this guy, and he was like standing in front of a car like with a gun, and I was like, who the fuck are you? And I clicked on his bio and it said we have a couple of mutual friends, but I was like, I have no idea who this person is. So there's been a couple times where I've unfriended a couple people because I had no idea who they were.
Why did you friend them in the first place?
I don't know. That's the problem, because sometimes you'll see a thing where it's like, oh, you know, this person knows him, so I guess it's safe for me to follow that person too. So it's the weirdest thing. I want to talk about Twitter, because Twitter is like my playground. I freaking love Twitter. By the way, we have a Twitter.
Oh yeah, little plug.
Shameless plug in the middle.
Yeah, right.
We have a Twitter. It's at Can We Talk Barry, Barry, like Barry Allen. Yeah, just go on there and you'll understand the.
Yeah. Well, honestly, we were trying to pick a different name, but nothing that we wanted to use was available, and I'm too particular to let us have a number in our @ name. So I was like, we can't do numbers, that's unprofessional. So we ended up going with Can We Talk Barry, because recently I've been really obsessed with the latest season of The Flash. So
right. And plus we just like the Flash character too.
Yeah.
Flash, so there's that. So you can follow us on Twitter, Can We Talk Barry. And Twitter was created in 2006. Now, I didn't get a Twitter until 2012. So that was like right before I graduated from high school.
Dude, that's when I got a Facebook for the first time.
I didn't have Twitter for the longest time because I didn't know how to do it, because I thought you had to post something that had relevance.
Yeah.
And hashtags started to become a thing at that point.
Oh.
And I was like, they were like, oh, you got to use the £, and then you say your post. And I was like, what's the point of this? And at the time, you know, hashtag was you click on it and it just takes you to it's just, you know, it's a chat room basically. Not really, but you know what I mean. So that's how I established what hashtags were. And that was really interesting too. And then Instagram was 2010. So that's like the most.
Instagram's the first like.
And Snapchat's 2011. So those are all recent.
Yeah, it's so weird because I remember Facebook, I remember YouTube, I remember Twitter. All those things came out, but I wasn't like really into social media, even with all those things. Like Facebook, I played games. I would talk to people on the chat room. I had some conversations with like my friends and stuff. We preferred Facebook Messenger over text message a lot of the times. It was easier to have group chats and stuff like that. Facebook, I feel like when I was younger, since it was like the first time social media became like a huge thing, that was like the thing that I got really obsessed with, but like it didn't last that long. I got kind of over it after a while. So I got out of Facebook, and then YouTube, I was really into YouTube when like, you know, all those like British YouTubers were like really popping, and like they were the first people to start hitting 1 million subscribers and stuff like that. You know when that came around?
I don't remember any of those.
Well, like I'm trying to remember, like there was Charlie, I can't remember his last name, but he hit like he was one of the first like British YouTubers to hit 1 million subscribers. It was like bullshit, like funny videos basically. Yeah, there was like Alex Day, who I think everyone stopped following because he, you know, sexually assaulted some people, but that's a nice topic for later. Like some of his followers, basically, because they had fan meets and stuff. And then, like, there was, like,
that's weird.
There was this girl, she had, like, a whole channel, like, where she was a singer and, like, she did books. I think her name was Carrie
Yeah. See, I never really, and even now, I don't really
But-
follow a lot of huge like Instagrammers.
Like you know Dan and Phil. Oh, they're the ones that I showed you, like the Sims.
Oh,
Let's
those
Play.
people. Yeah.
Yeah, like they're a part of that, but like they're one of the only ones that have stayed relevant. Like,
Yeah.
until now.
I mean, even
but-
now, I don't really follow a lot of huge YouTubers.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, I kind of
Yeah.
like those smaller.
Yeah, I don't really follow
channels.
them anymore. Anyways, like that was what I really got into YouTube for.
I used to watch =3, and you watch Anna Akana's videos.
I love Anna
and
Akana.
she dated.
I know Ray William Johnson.
I used to watch.
I was
=3.
obsessed with his videos,
Dude,
too.
those videos, and it's funny because they're obviously still on YouTube, and so watch them now and see the quality and how different the quality
Yeah,
is.
it's insane.
I love watching his videos. It was almost like watching a sitcom. You'd come home from. I remember coming home from school and clicking on =3 and wondering.
My
like,
brother actually is the one that introduced me to that channel, and that's how I found Anna Akana through that. And yeah, it's just like so interesting because the content that I watch on YouTube has changed as well. Like I used to watch that kind of stuff, and then like nowadays I watch like filmmakers, and I watch like actual like educational stuff, and I watch stuff that's like, you know, inspirational, and I like to watch like really interesting vlogs and like just creative people and stuff. But like back then it was just more like I would go to watch it to be entertained. I would watch like comedy and like things like that. But now I go to be like more educated than anything.
I mean,
to feel inspired. Like I do watch it for entertainment sometimes, but just not as much as I used to. And then like with Twitter, I never really got into Twitter ever.
I love Twitter, bro.
Like there was a point in time, like I think it was like in 2014, I got a Twitter, but I never used it. And then just like last year or so, I tried using my Twitter, and like I've just never been good at Twitter. And I feel like that's another thing. The fact that I feel like I have to be good at social media, like I feel like that's something that's changed. Because before it was just for fun, but like nowadays I feel like it's turned into something that is very much like you have to be good at it. Like it's like a tool that you have to learn how to use like for certain purposes.
I feel like that's really mostly for Instagram because I don't really tweet. I don't wake up in the morning and like tweet anything. And every now and then I'll throw a tweet out there, but for the most part, I like to like things. I like to retweet things, or I just like to see if there's an announcement or if there's, you know, an award show or if there's a movie that just recently came out or whatever. I like going on the trendings and like seeing people talk about like the news and stuff like that. I feel like the only thing that you really need to be quote unquote good at is Instagram, because I know a lot of people take a lot of time to make their Instagram look aesthetically pleasing.
But like, here's the thing. I never used Twitter until the whole social media as a way to brand yourself came about. You know what I mean? Because like I was never in Twitter in the first place. And at this point, I feel like the main brand type social media platforms people use is Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook and YouTube.
Yeah.
For me, like YouTube, simple enough. You post videos. Like that's like a skill set. You have to learn how to make videos and post them and stuff like that. And then once you get more into it, you learn about thumbnails, you learn about descriptions and titles. That's one thing. Facebook is just like a news, like it's like here's update type platform. Twitter is like you have to have like really short, interesting, captivating content, and it's all through words. And I'm a long form writer, if any type of writer at all. I would classify myself as more long form. I'm not as good at the short form stuff. And so I feel like it's harder for me to use Twitter in a way that is for like build a brand type stuff. And also the fact that you have to post so frequently on Twitter is exhausting to me because I do not like to be on social media that often.
I mean, to be fair, you don't really have to.
Yeah, but like
it's just a lot of.
It's just like I feel like with the culture around the whole branding type thing, it's like a full-time job to be on social media these days. Like at least that's how the culture presents it as. I don't feel like it's necessary, but I feel like that's how a lot of it presents itself as, if that makes sense.
So that kind of brings me into, because I have a couple of discussion questions and discussion statements, I guess, that I want to touch on, and that's how social media affects us, because you brought up something that I think is really important about this whole, you have to feel like you're good at this, or you have to feel like, what, you know what I'm saying? Like, I like what you said about that, and I think it's really interesting because I've never felt that way about social media at all. Yeah, I'm not a slave to it at all, and I think the reason why is just because I'm not really addicted to stuff like that. I just like going on Twitter because I like to see what people have to say, and I like when something happens, I like being able to go on there and like see the memes or just see people's posts. And every now and then I like when people retweet stuff, and we always have those tweets that go viral every now and then. And I like seeing those relatable tweets. But I think that's interesting because especially with Instagram and Twitter, those are kind of the biggest ones when it comes to having to make sure it looks good or you have to be good at it, because Facebook at this point is not as, I mean, it's still popular, but it's not as impressive now, I think. Because Instagram and Twitter, I think, have taken that. But I feel like social media has really affected how people view certain things, because if something happens, you immediately want to share it with everybody, and you have to make sure that you post the right photo. You take all these different photos just to post one, and by the time you get around to posting that one, you've already filtered it out, you've already probably photoshopped it or what have you. So I think it's that pressure to look good. I mean, granted, I don't want to post something on Instagram or Twitter or Twitter that looks stupid. I don't want to look stupid online also, but I think it's this weird added pressure of making sure you post something that looks good because you don't want people to know that you suck, basically.
Yeah, and like, I don't know, for me personally, like, I'm a perfectionist at everything that I do. And so I feel like I take everything on as like a project more than as like an outlet for like just enjoyment. I don't really use social media for entertainment like I used to. Nowadays, like, because definitely I think the social media culture is changing, where it used to be, like, it still is to an extent, especially, but I think it depends on like the generation we're looking at as well, and like also the type of person we're looking at. But certain people, they put such like an emphasis on using social media to brand themselves these days. Like, I feel like that's a huge movement, I guess, where they're like, oh, social media is a tool, and like you have to be like popular on Instagram and Twitter if you want to be successful in your career, because like, but I feel like people overemphasize the importance of social media in that aspect. And like, I feel like because I'm a perfectionist, once I started seeing social media through that lens more, I suddenly was like, oh my God, I have to have like this perfect Instagram. I have to have this perfect Twitter, and I need to get followers and gain followers if I want to be successful. And then I was suddenly like, what the fuck? Like, that just doesn't make any sense to me, because people were still being successful before social media came around. And I feel like social media is more a side effect of like having clout, I guess. Like, if you're good at what you do and if you're successful, followers will come after. But social media isn't necessarily what drives success and what drives like a following. I think it's more like the content that you're creating outside of that. So even for creatives, where a lot of our content focuses around social media, I don't think that social media is what drives it, if that makes sense.
But I think there are people, though, especially now on Instagram, who have only become famous because of the posts that they have on Instagram. And it's a lot of, unfortunately, women exposing certain body parts that get them exposure, and that's what has caused them to have some sort of success because of that, ass photo on Instagram, which I don't particularly care about. But I always hear this saying about, Instagram models.
Yeah.
And Instagram, celebrities. They're only famous because Instagram.
Or influencers.
I'm trying to use wholesome words.
Dude, okay, but like, even not necessarily like I don't know if they're posting nudes is what you're talking about.
I mean, it's stimulated nudes, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, some of them are fully naked, but for the most part, it's like ass.
I mean, something that I've noticed that a lot of people who are really famous on Instagram is like people who are what they call themselves influencers.
That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
Yeah, I know, right? I'm like, what are you influencing? Like, you're just posting on social.
Sex.
Like, not even that, but like they just post fashion related stuff, or like they're just like they either do model, they post fashion related stuff, or they're like about health and fitness, and then like they kind of reinforce an unrealistic body standard, which this is a whole other topic for a whole other podcast, I feel like. But I feel like, I don't know, I just feel like for the majority of the population, social media, like the importance of it is overemphasized. It's so funny because, kind of going back to how we were talking about how social media has changed, I remember when I first got an Instagram, I literally just posted stuff that I thought looked cool. Like, I would take pictures of my food, like I would take pictures of like cool places I was going to, and like when I was traveling, I would like take videos of concerts that I went to, and I would just post stuff that like I wanted to like have like like a visual memory bank of, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Things that like I wanted on there for myself. And nowadays, like my Instagram has none of that on there. It's like I completely got rid of all of that stuff, and now it's just modeling photos or dance related videos or things that like are all surrounding like this brand. You know what I mean? It's like I like it, but it's different. It's very different because like I enjoy what I post now, but it's very different from what I used to post.
In the beginning of my Instagram career, I was only posting.
Wait, Instagram career.
Exactly. I was posting a lot of, like you said, I was posting a lot of photos of food, and I got my social media. I mean, my Instagram in the later parts of my, or no, it must have been 2011. I think is when I got my Instagram. Because I was still, I was a junior in high school. So anyway, I just remember posting a lot of stuff because I was on the drill team, and so every Friday and sometimes on Saturdays we had football games, right? So I would always post, go Wildcats. I would post a photo of, something related to dance, or I would post, every now and then I would post my actual face, but for the most part I was posting, like you said, concerts or, here's a tree, I'm going to post the tree.
Yeah, just things that we found interesting.
Right, and now I feel like I only post a photo on Instagram maybe once every so often because I don't want to go on Instagram and look stupid because there's so many people on Instagram now that I think I look good compared to someone who's taking the exact same photo, but they have better lighting, they have better Photoshop, and so it just feels like this weird pressure. I also want to talk about, do you feel like nothing is personal anymore because everybody can just post everything on social media?
Oh yeah, of course. This is something I was thinking about the other day. There's nothing I hate more than social media couples. Like, no offense to them, like that's great if they can do that, but like I just feel like so many people post so much about their relationships on social media these days. Have you noticed that, or is that just me? Yeah, like it's just, I'm like, that's one thing where I'm like, I feel like if you have the need to put so much of your relationship on social media, like maybe your relationship isn't as real as it like seems to be.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm just kind of like, it's like this curated, I'm throwing out my relationship into the world for everyone to see, and I'm like, I feel like if your relationship is real, you don't need to put it all over social media. You know what I mean?
I remember I was told once when I was younger that if you have to post, or if you keep posting about your relationship on social media, then it's not actually a relationship. If you have to keep constantly being like, oh, me and my husband, or me and my wife, or me and my girl, or whatever, me and my boy, like we're so cute, da, da, da. And that's how you know like we're having actual problems in our relationship. So I think it's really interesting because I go back to my brother and his girlfriend, for example. They've been together, 4 years at this point? And if you go through their social media accounts, there's maybe 3 or 4 photos of them together. And people always are like, oh, are you still with, so-and-so? Are you still with that guy? Are you still with that girl?
Right.
I haven't seen you post about them. Just because I haven't posted about them doesn't mean anything. And so I think that right there is so interesting. I came across this photo the other day on Twitter, and there was this couple, a boy and a girl, and they were in the shower, and they were like washing each other's hair. Like you could clearly tell that they were both in the shower. Like It wasn't a stimulated, oh, let's just pretend we're in the shower. They were both clearly in the nude. And someone on Twitter like quoted the tweet and said, I guess nothing's personal anymore. Some stuff you shouldn't post on social media. And some people have posted, and there's this viral video that keeps going around on Twitter right now about this girl in an eggplant, and I just, it grosses me out.
That's so
And as
gross,
a black girl, it makes me even more infuriating because it's just my people, and I don't like that. And so it's just, some stuff should not be shared on social media. And I know for me, I have posted some stuff on social media that I haven't posted anything derogatory, obviously, because I'm not that kind of girl, but there's been a couple times where I'll post something because I got angry, and I'll post a mean post on Facebook or an angry tweet, or I'll post like a passive aggressive quote, or if I got drunk one night, I'll be on my Snapchat, and all of a sudden I'll wake up the next morning and I'm like, God damn it. But now I know if I'm drinking, I either turn my phone off or at this point I've controlled, like I know how to drink responsibly and I know how to be drunk responsibly. Right. So I know not to.
A whole other topic.
Right. I know not to be on my phone when I'm drunk. And so I know that there's also certain people that I do know that are really reckless when they're drunk. So I will take their phone from them.
Yeah.
And I think it's really interesting because there's just so much now that as soon as, and this is kind of something that happened personally, the passive aggressive tweet that I told you about, that right there is a problem because that was a very personal, private thing that got exposed on social media in a way that wasn't directly, but I'm not a dumbass, so I know that that was targeted at me because of something that was going on right.
And even though maybe not everyone else knows about what that means or knows what the context is, you know it. And so like the fact that it's out there and everyone else is going to be questioning like what's this about is kind of like infuriating. So I totally get that. And then there's something you said people are very reckless when they drink and they're on their phone. I just feel like people are reckless, period, when they're on their phone these days. And I feel like a major reason for that is that people just don't have any emotional intelligence, first off. And then they also just don't have any self-awareness or self-control over how they handle their own emotions. Like, not just, like, as far as, like, how they handle other people's emotions, but how they handle their own emotions. And I feel like these days people are so quick to just vent everything out onto social media, but they're not, like, you're not just talking into a black hole. Like, exactly. that is the world you are talking to.
And the crazy part about some of it is, and I've seen the receipts is what people call it, how you can post something and you'll delete it, but someone has already screenshotted it. It's already in the ether. You know what I'm saying? Everybody always has seen it. And that kind of goes into what you were saying about you're so quick to be angry and let me quickly, aggressively tweet something. But there's also a lot of cancel culture that's going on right now, which is the absolute worst, where someone can say, I don't really agree with that. And all of a sudden everyone's like, cancel him. He's done. He's finished. Put a fork in him. He's done. And that's the worst thing because
you can ruin someone's life just for not having the same opinion as you.
And it's always some sort of unpopular opinion or some sort of like political stance.
And just because it's unpopular doesn't mean that it's wrong. Everybody has this assumption that their opinion is the absolute truth. And I'm like, but if you're being truly open-minded, you don't believe in any such thing as an absolute truth. You genuinely believe that there are many different truths that are just differing based on your different perspective of reality. And you don't feel this need to put your opinion on everyone else, even if you don't agree with it. Like, for example, my whole family supports Donald Trump. I do not support Donald Trump on any level whatsoever.
Right.
But I don't sit there and say, oh, my family are horrible people. They're
all racist.
They have their flaws. They're a little bit racist. But I was like, but honestly, like, it sucks. Like, I don't think that they're the greatest people, but they're not the worst people. Like, they're not murderers. Like, you know what I mean?
That we know of.
Well, that we know of. They're not rapists that we know of. So, I just feel like the world's not as black and white as you think. And, like, a lot of my family, they don't even understand, like, they don't support Donald Trump because they're actively, like, I'm a racist and I hate, like, every other person who's not white. Like, they don't say shit like that, but they're just ignorant. That's all. Like, there are certain things that they just genuinely don't understand because their generation, first off, is very different as far as the social culture goes. And also, like, they just don't, like, they cannot wrap their mind around certain, like, things because that's just how they were raised. That's just how they grew up. That's just how they've, like, been through life. And some people are just set in their ways like that. And, like, there's nothing you can do to change that. And it doesn't make them horrible people because my grandmother, for example, she's a sweet, caring person. She raised 2 of her grandchildren who are not her own and, like, supported, like, us financially and, like, still continues to do so.
Yeah.
And she's not a horrible person. She just, like, has, like, certain opinions that I don't agree with and, like, certain beliefs that I don't agree with, but she's also 2 generations separated from us. So, like, I can't judge her for that. And I can't say that if I didn't go through exactly every single thing that she went through in life that I wouldn't feel exactly the same way that she does.
Right. And I also think that, you know, in the early 2000s, people weren't as offended. Everybody is so offended now, where in the early 2000s, people were saying all kinds of outlandish shit. And now if you say if you even have a thought, if you even say half of what people would say in 2007 or whatever, you immediately get, you're, you know what I'm saying? Like, you get immediately reprimanded.
It's just like you're getting, like, you're getting stoned. But
exactly.
Like, not actually, but like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's
it's one of those things.
Modern day version of being stoned.
Exactly. And I came across, I don't know if you, well, no, because you're not on Twitter, but Mario Lopez had said something about, he was like, I think a 3-year-old, you don't really need to concern, like a 3-year-old shouldn't concern themselves with sexuality or knowing what trans means or knowing what gay means. Like, they're 3. Like, they're not going to know what that is. Like, they shouldn't know what it is. They're 3 years old. They can barely speak. So why am I, and everyone was like, oh, he doesn't support the trans community.
That's so stupid.
And literally the interviewer was like, I completely agree, because imagine you kind of forcing that on your kid when they're younger. And then they get older and they're like, oh, I don't know what this means. And so everyone freaked out about it.
I feel like here's something that someone told me a long time ago, and it didn't have anything to do with trans specifically. It had to do with actually just teaching children about sex.
Yeah.
Like the basics of like how sex works. And they said when the right time to start teaching your child about these things is when they come to you asking about it.
Yes.
Because if they can ask the question, that means they're ready to understand what you're talking about. But if you start throwing all this information at them before they're even asking the questions, then they're not going to know anything. Like, they're going to be like, what? And then, like, their entire reality is going to be shaped around just what you tell them. They're not going to be able to process that information in their own time and in their own right.
Right.
I'm like, so I think if they come to you asking, like, hey, Mom, what's transgender? Mean? Like, then you can be like, oh, well, that's what this is. And like,
and people on social media are so quick to say, especially going back to this whole Mario Lopez thing, they were like, he doesn't support the community. And people were like, dog, he's not wrong. Nothing he was saying was wrong. He wasn't saying burn them at the stake,
Right.
So I think it's so interesting, because that's just one example of many where someone has said something and all of a sudden they're canceled for the rest of their life. It is the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
Yeah. And like, I've had similar experiences because, like, for example, like, you can say something and someone will take it so out of context.
Yeah.
Like, I've told people before, personally, I don't prefer to do labels. And to them, like, I've had people who take that as like, oh, you're judging us for labeling ourselves a certain way. And like, you think that like this and this. And then they start assuming that I identify with certain labels. Like,
yeah. And the problem that I have with that, on a completely unrelated note, the people who are like, I don't believe in labels, are the main ones giving themselves labels, but that's another topic for another day.
Yeah, I'm not gonna go there, but
exactly, that's another, probably not, because
I feel like
we'll get canceled for that podcast.
I feel like this whole conversation right here is a conversation for another day.
But. Right. Well, so let's just jump into our my next discussion
about social media.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah.
So, how do you feel like social media has affected our image of how we view other people and how we view ourselves?
For me personally, I think more so than like all of the health and fitness, like body comparison, like body image type stuff, I think more so than that, what affects me is when I get on Instagram, I'm looking for attention, I think, from certain people or just from people in general.
Yeah.
Like, I can have 50 likes on a photo, but if I don't have that like from that one person, I'm like, where are they?
Yeah.
Like, or
it's
like if they don't
on Snapchat, it's like, he didn't view my story, so what's the point?
Exactly. And so I feel like that's kind of an issue that affects how we view, like, not even just ourselves and others, but like how we view our relationships with people. Because we base so much of our relationships based on our interaction through social media. We take, like, if you don't like my post, suddenly you're avoiding me. Or like, or if you view my story but you don't send me a message, you're avoiding me. Like, or you're just like, or something's wrong, or like we've like messed up, or like something's affecting our relationship. But in reality, that's so not true.
I think also, kind of going off of that, I remember, maybe, I mean, it still goes on now, but I think because like my friends are getting older, like their view on social media, they don't really pay attention to it as much. But when we were in high school, especially, they would say something like, oh, I'll just give a random example. They'll say something like, oh, well, did you not see my story? So if you watched my story, you would know how I feel. And I'm like, well, I don't go on there. So why don't you just tell me how you feel instead?
Right.
So it's one of those things where especially now, I'm never going to know how you feel if you don't tell me, but you're just going to assume that I no, because I saw your passive aggressive tweet. So that's kind of this way of going, you need to call me. But I think the image of how we view ourselves and others has sort of been affected, has extremely been affected by social media because, like you said, the whole attention thing too. But I think some of that, and even for me, I'm guilty of this too, especially on Instagram. You see these girls, these women. There's this one person on Instagram who has like she doesn't have 2 kids anymore. She still has 2 kids, but she like had a fiance, I guess they're no longer together. She's like this fitness guru. And I'm like, oh man, she's got a house, she's got her 2 kids. I'm thinking she's like a grown-ass woman. She's literally younger than I am.
Yeah.
And I just think, and I would look at her and I would say, damn, like I need to have that same body. I need to figure out how to have 2 kids with a really attractive fiance as well. I need to have all of these things. And I would sort of, and even people that I follow on Instagram, I would see their posts and I'm like, damn, they have really cool posts. I need to get that image. Yeah. So I was seeing how they were posting and I was like, I need to go to a cool background with a cool, clever caption of like, you know, today's not the same as tomorrow. You know, something stupid like that. You know what I'm saying? And that's the biggest thing. But people sort of compare themselves to what they saw or see on social media, especially with relationships. I don't know how many times I've seen relationship goals over the last, 6 years, maybe longer? I don't know.
Yeah, relationships on social media are so stupid in my opinion. I'm like, personally, like, I don't need the whole world to know what's going on in my business. And like, I don't know, like, the people that are on my social media, I am not friends with most of them. And like, it's so interesting to me because, for example, if someone does view my story on like Instagram, for example, but like I message them before I post that story and they see my story, but they haven't responded to my message, I'm like, because like the next time I see them, they're like, oh, sorry, I didn't get back to your message because I was so busy.
Yeah, but you were on Twitter though.
And I was like, but I saw you on my watching my story. I saw you posting on Twitter. I was like, you're full of shit. Like, because I know you're on your phone. Or like you can see when people are active now sometimes.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
especially on Snapchat with the app.
Yeah, I'm like,
the map.
Yeah, I'm like, I know you're on your phone. I was like, so why aren't you responding? And so I think that has an effect on people's relationships as well, is because you're like, clearly I'm just not your priority, but something else on social media is.
Right.
And so I'm like, what does that mean?
Right.
Like,
and I also think too, because I have a friend who's not on social media at all. She had a Facebook at one point, but it's gone. But Twitter, Instagram, the whole bit, she doesn't have any of that. And you know, when people find out that she's not on social media, they give her a hard time, like, oh, you're too good for social media, or oh, you're not on social. And she's like, I just don't feel the need to get on social media.
That was another thing. So when I went to the nail salon with Lauren, Lauren's one of our friends that she did room with us. She's not our roommate anymore, sadly. Shout out to Lauren.
She left us.
She left us. But yeah, you guys will probably hear us talk about Lauren at some points.
Maybe. You might even hear her on the podcast.
Yeah, at some point, because she's got some great opinions.
Right?
You said that so sarcastic. But yeah, so I went to the nail salon to get a pedicure, and she got a manicure. This was for my birthday. And when I was there, the lady who we were sitting with, I was talking to Lauren about how the fact, like, well, Lauren was actually telling this lady that I wasn't on social media. I can't remember how this conversation came up. But she was like, oh, yeah, she's not on any social media because she's a minimalist now. And I'm like, oh, my God, Lauren, why are you telling everybody that I'm a minimalist? Like, I don't go around, like, shouting it out to the world. But, yeah, and she was just like, so she's not on social media anymore. And the lady literally said to me, that's dumb. And I'm like, why are you, like, I was like, I'm sitting here, why is it dumb to not be on social media? And she's like, that's just boring. And I'm like, why is it boring to not be on social media? I don't understand, like, I'm just not on social media. I'm like, I'm sorry if you don't agree with that or if that's not what you want for your life, but like, don't sit there and tell me that I'm boring. Like, what?
And that kind of takes me into my next idea is, are we addicted to it?
I think some people are.
Some people are super addicted to it. I have this weird connection to Twitter just because I like to see what people have to say about certain things, but I'm not addicted to it in the sense where
you can't go without it.
Right. I remember sometime a couple semesters ago, my phone had died and my charger had been broken. Mm-hmm. And I went like 3 days without my phone just because I was too lazy to go to Target and get a new one. And so anyway, I sent a message like right before my phone died, and I was like, hey, people that I talk to, like my dad, Chris and Mia, Jill, Alexis, people that I always talk to, shout out to all of you guys. And I was like, oh, just be careful, like if you don't hear from me for a couple days, like my phone died, whatever. People were like, cool. 3 days went by, and the first day I was like, oh my God, because you're so used to grabbing your phone, you wake up in the morning, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Everybody.
Okay.
Well, that's what I'm saying, but everyone is guilty of checking their phone for the first time, whether you check one app or all three or whatever.
Yeah.
But I didn't have it for the first day, and I was just like, oh my God, there's stuff going on Twitter that I'm missing. It needs to be a part of the conversation, even though I don't actually engage in the conversation. I just like to read and lurk, as they say.
Lurk.
But after maybe 3 or 4 hours, it didn't bother me. So I always wonder if social media just went out for a full day where people had to be forced to talk to each other or engage in their actual lives. I wonder how people would respond to that.
I think some people would have a really hard time functioning because I think people use social media as like this way to fill their boredom. People are so bad at feeling bored these days. Like if you're bored, you're on your phone. Like sometimes like we're just on our phone because we don't know what else to do with ourselves. Like we're sitting there and
turn
like
the phone on, swipe the screen, turn it off.
Yeah, exactly. Like you're not even clicking on anything. You're just there to like fumble with your hands because like and like here's the thing. I feel like maybe people aren't addicted to social media in the sense that they feel like they can't go without it. A lot of people who are addicted to social media will say, oh, but if I had to go without it, I could. I just don't want to. Like, that's the standard addict saying, like, to anything, like, honestly. And so I feel like it's just that, and it's not anyone's fault. I feel like just the attention culture, like, in general, when it comes to social media, they literally use psychology to get that reaction out of us, like out of our brains. Like notifications, the way that they design notifications is to where we cannot ignore them. And so like that's why I turn notifications off to where they don't pop up on my phone, because if I see a notification, I'm gonna be too tempted to check it,
to click on it.
Like even if like I don't want to, or like even if I don't have time, like I'm like I just want it off of my phone. Like, and also like for example, like on Instagram, something that's always bothered me, and I don't know if this bothers anybody else, but like they have like the color around the circle of the story if you haven't seen the story yet, and then it's like dull if you have seen it. And I hate seeing that color. I have to click on it just so I can get that color to go away. And sometimes I'll just sit there and tap through people's stories without actually watching it, just because I want that color to go away. And like that's like such a psychological reaction with all notifications, because you know the notifications on Facebook used to be blue, and they turned them red because red gets more of a reaction for people to want to click on it. And so I feel like social media is addicting to almost everyone. Not everyone, and I think there are different levels of addiction, but I think it is addicting to almost everyone, myself included. But I think you can be intentional about how you counter that. And I think certain people like myself and you, for example, we have practice countering that, and so we don't feel like we're addicted to it, but I think we can be if we let ourselves.
And I know some people now, especially on YouTube, does YouTube count as social media? Because I feel like at that point it's just become a job.
I feel like
because people are making millions of dollars off of YouTube alone.
I feel like some people consider YouTube to be a platform instead of social media, but I think it depends on how you use it.
Right. I think it's really interesting because I know there's so many people who, or I guess this kind of goes into addiction as well, but just being addicted to your phone, period. And as I was telling her, you guys obviously can't see us, but I'll literally turn my phone on, I'll swipe the screen, go to where the apps and stuff are, swipe through a little page, then turn it off.
Yeah, you won't even click on any of the apps. You just swipe through them.
Or there's sometimes, like you said, you go on your Instagram and you see the story and you just click, and you're not watching anyone's story. If someone posts
I'm just there to get it out of the way.
Right. If someone has like a cool like little,
I'm not
words or whatever, you don't even read them.
Yeah, I'm not even like taking in the content. I'm just kind of like doing it out of habit at that point. So, which is why I have become a digital minimalist.
And I just think for me, having such a healthy relationship with social media is important, but now it's become I remember I was at a football game once, And there was these guys that were sitting behind me, and one of them was like, "Oh, I can't wait to get on Twitter tonight when I get home because something at the football game happened." So he was like, "I want to be a part of my little community of friends."
Right.
And it's so interesting because as soon as something happened, someone was like, "Oh, let me go to Twitter and see what they're talking about." And I'm guilty of it too, especially if there's like a national event that's gone down, whether it's something good or bad. I'm like, "Oh, let me get on Twitter so I can see what people are talking about." And especially if I'm watching a show, like for example, Game of Thrones obviously just ended. And that's such an event every Sunday night.
Right.
And so I would go on on Twitter, hashtag Game of Thrones, For the Throne, The North Remembers, whatever. And I'm like scrolling, looking at all these things and not even really paying attention to the show because I'm more curious about what people are saying versus, or even that I'm not saying this is me, but sometimes it's like, I'm going to let what other people have to say influence how I feel about a situation.
Right, I agree with that as well. But we've been talking a lot about, like, the cons. I feel like a lot of the negatives. But, like, to be fair, kind of like how you said, people go to talk about, like, a show on Twitter or talk about an event that happened. I think that's actually, like, a good thing that you get out of social media. Not, like, the whole being influenced by what people are saying, but, like, a sense of community, which I feel like people, like we said before, have over-exaggerated the importance of that and, like, how much value, because you can't replace actual real interactions in your daily life through social media. But I think it's really interesting how we get, like, memes, like, that are freaking hilarious.
Bro, I don't think I can live my life without a good meme.
Memes
or
are
a reaction face or a GIF.
Or, like, just the fact that we can, like, go on to something and see, like say, like, a tragic event happens, like Donald Trump becomes president, but we go on to Twitter and we see all these memes that just make, I don't know, it makes those tragic things seem so much lighter and funnier because, like, we're able to make fun of it. Right. I feel like, so that's a good thing that I feel like we get out of social media because we can't have that, like, in everyday life. Like, people aren't going to make jokes like that, like, into your face. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's just something that's for the internet. And so I think there are good things, but, like, there's always that downside. And personally, maybe I'm just a bit more negative when it comes to social media, so I see a lot of the negatives, but I do think social media can be good in certain ways.
Especially
if you know, and I think if you know how to use it, I think it's more about how you use it, not the actual apps and the medias themselves.
Yeah, because Facebook is really good too, because I know that there's people on my Facebook right now that if I got rid of my Facebook or they got rid of their Facebook, I'd never see them and I'd never talk to them ever again because of our relationship is only fueled because we still have Facebook. So every now and then they'll like my post or I'll like their post, or maybe once a year they'll tag me in a video or they'll tag me in a comment or whatever.
Yeah, and see that's maybe a place where I disagree with you. I feel like I deleted my Facebook exactly for that reason. I'm like, there are people I will never talk to if I don't have a Facebook. And I'm like, so why am I having a relationship with them, period?
That makes sense as well, because I think it's really weird because that's kind of a slippery slope, I think, because if it's like, if I'm only friends with you because of Facebook, then we shouldn't be friends at all, that kind of thing. Okay, I get that. Because the amount of time it'll take you to go on Facebook, post, tag, get your internet connection, you could have been called me or wrote me a letter or sent a carrier pigeon, something. Yeah. Like, by the time it took you to get on social media, you could have already called me. But I just think it's really weird because I think, and I have, especially like older people that I know, like grandparents or aunts or old teachers and stuff like that, our relationship is on Facebook. And on my birthday, this is the thing that I hate the most. On my birthday, I got happy birthday on my wall from people that should have called me.
Right.
My grandmother was like, happy birthday. And I was like, bro, call me.
Yeah, I have a great grandmother who she always just sends me a message or she'll post on my wall or my timeline or something. And I'm like, why?
Our social media has made people really lazy.
Yeah, it has.
Because I know so many people who are like, damn, if Facebook didn't tell me when so-and-so's birthday was, I would never have known. And I think that's the crazy part too, because, you get on Facebook and people are like, oh yeah, happy birthday to whoever, And so I think that's just a really interesting thing. But social media is such a complex thing because people do use it for marketing. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that I wouldn't have known anything about it if Twitter didn't tell me. You know what I mean? Yeah. And there's a lot of other stuff, not just marketing with,
just information, news.
Just information, because especially with the news, somebody on Twitter has always come with the receipts. Someone's
Yep.
always like, oh, this is what CNN is telling you, but let me tell you what the actual facts are.
Mhm.
Or if there's some sort of organization or whatever, Twitter is like, oh, don't click on this because of that. And I think there's so many different things that social media is good for, whether, you know, it's promoting something really positive or not. And I think it's just so, I don't know, social media is such a weird and tricky place, but
Yeah.
I mean, it's gonna be there forever. I'm just really curious because I would love to know what would happen if social media just went away for a day.
Yeah.
You know, the stock market isn't gonna explode because social media stopped for one day.
Dun 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 dun.
Plot twist, the stock market crashes because social media was like, I'm taking a break. Yeah, I don't really feel like it.
I don't really feel like it.
But
God.
do you have anything else about social media? I don't know. I kind of just wanted to talk about this because I feel like social media has become such a huge thing these days.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like social media is definitely tricky. I think going forward, I've personally just been reevaluating my relationship with social media. It's honestly like I feel like I have so much more clarity when I step away from it.
Yeah.
Because I have time to think and like I'm not constantly distracted. And that's a big thing. Personally, like if anyone's interested in this topic, I recommend going to read Digital Minimalism by Cal Newport. It's a great book. Not sponsored, but
Yeah.
but you know, it's just like a really good book that I've read and it's like helped me out a lot. Our friend Lauren that we were just talking about before, like she's only like what, like 2 years younger than me? So she's like 18, 19
She
now?
just turned 19.
She just turned 19, yeah. Her relationship with social media and her phone is so different just from us. And there's only a 2-year age gap between me and her. And then how many years between you and her? Like
4?
4? Yeah, like 4 years. So like,
Maybe.
yeah, so like that's just crazy to me how big of a difference.
5.
Yeah, it's just crazy to me how big of a difference there is with it in just a couple of years or just like 5 years.
Yeah, which
like,
makes you think how people who are 13 now, 14 now,
or even like 11, like my younger brother, like how they're gonna
grow up. Yeah.
Yeah, and like, oh my gosh, this reminds me of a random fiction book I read once upon a time. They had like a chip inside of their head where they could like see the internet like through their eyes. Like they didn't need computers or phones or anything.
That kind of reminds. Oh, is it Feed?
Yeah.
Bro, you should listen to that on an audiobook.
Oh my gosh.
That's actually one of my favorite books, to be honest with you. Feed.
Yeah.
I recommend everybody, when you're listening, again, another recommended reading.
Yeah.
You should really read Feed.
Yeah. That book was like really eye-opening. I was like, whoa, because like imagine what if that's our future with social media and like with the internet. Like
it's written by Matthew Tobin Anderson, and I recommend you listen to the audiobook because it is Feed, so they're picking up a bunch of commercials basically. So in the audiobook, it'll have commercial.
That's amazing.
You know, it'll and when I was listening to the audiobook, they literally had commercials in the audiobook because that's what the book is. And I didn't know that was in the book until I saw the physical copy, and literally these people are in actual dialogue, and all of a sudden a commercial breaks out while they're having a conversation.
Yeah.
So the main character is talking to the girl, Violet, and they're trying to like get to know each other. They're bonding over this really emotional thing, but the ads keep getting in the way. And
I wonder if a future like that is what's waiting for us.
I mean, I don't have time for no chip in my head, but
I won't. But you know, those younger generations, they're always up to trying crazy shit. So.
Right? Or have you ever seen?
I'm talking about the younger generations. Like I'm this old woman now.
Right? Have you seen the SpongeBob movie where Plankton has those buckets on everyone's head that he controls? That's what social media is gonna happen to us in the year 3000, as the Jonas Brothers said. So I just found this article in the process of us talking, and it's 7 reasons why social media is bad for you. So I want to say them, and then we'll kind of wrap up. My father is literally calling me in the middle of this podcast.
Tell him no.
I will call him back. So number 1 is depression and anxiety.
Yep.
Number 2 is cyberbullying.
Yup.
Number 3 is FOMO, fear of missing out, which is a new term that I just heard about a couple months ago.
I've never heard of that until now.
Unrealistic expectations.
Mm-hmm.
Number 5 is negative body image.
Mm-hmm.
Number 6 is unhealthy sleep patterns.
Yup.
And finally, number 7 is just general addiction.
Yup.
So that's something to think about. I understand the whole fear of missing out thing, because sometimes I'm like, damn, it's been an hour. Something clearly happened on Twitter and I missed it.
I don't relate. I used to relate. I don't relate anymore because #digital minimalism.
Right.
So do you want to end on a quote?
So yeah, I actually have a quote, and it's from someone who is extremely important. You know them well, I think. And the quote of the podcast is, "Get off your fucking phone." And that, of course, is by yours truly. That is the quote for the podcast.
I fucking hate you. I just sat here. She's gonna edit the time that we sat here in silence out. But I just sat here waiting for her to find a quote on her phone for like a solid minute, and then she comes back with that garbage.
Listen, okay, I'm gonna be honest with you. I completely forgot to find a quote for the podcast, but "Get off your phone" is a good quote, I think.
Yeah, it's a great quote. Get the fuck off your phone, guys. And we'll leave you with that.
Thank you guys for listening, and our next episode is gonna be about money,
or lack thereof.
Right?
Because I'm broke as fuck.
Right. Anyway, thank you guys so much for listening. Again, you can follow us on social media. Can We Talk Barry?
And that's the only social media we have. We've also made a Patreon page, which if you just search on Patreon, Tori and Jude, or Jude and Tori, I think is actually, my name goes first, yeah. Jude and Tori, or the Can We Talk About It podcast, you can find our Patreon there. We are making most of our content on there public, but if you would like the additional content, feel free to, get a membership. We would love that, but if you can't afford it, it's totally understandable. We'll still be providing lots of content for you guys, so yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Peace out, suckers. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.